Get up here first. Good. Okay, go up me. Breathe. Thank you. Okay. So here we go. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So, the word of the Buddha, and for those of you who haven't heard this one before, this is trying to retranslate the very old texts, but retranslate them in ways where make them clearer, take out the repetition, and some of the words change their meanings, and even put it white on black, which is a new innovation. It's supposed to make it easier to see, I hope. I have a recording anyway. So, and last time I finished was before my retreat, and at that time I'd got to the seventh factor of the Eightfold Path, which was the Satipatthana, and I thought it might be a good idea just to start straight at the Satipatthana instead of just in the middle of the Satipatthana. So there'll be some repetition from last time. And you'll see that some of the ways, which is maybe like doing some quite amazing things, like putting dots instead of just one line, another line. You can just see on the page we have there now, the word of an Aryan, the work of the mind that goes back to the source. Make it easier for people to read. And for people to listen. Thank you. Okay, I've got a long way to go down yet. I've got this lovely thing. Mere suffering exists, no sufferer is found. So are you suffering? Of course you are. There's no sufferer in there. Yeah, it's not you. Whew. The deed is, but no doer of the deed is there. No, I really get up on things like this. The deed is, but no doer of the deed is there. So who meditated? Who broke their precept this afternoon? What? It wasn't me. No, I didn't do anything. The deed was, but no doer was there.
Is that karma?
So, yeah, there is karma if you think this is self. But if you go beyond the self, really have that insight, not just using it as an excuse. Nibbana is, but not a person who enters it. So no one gets into Nibbana. You disappear. The path is, but no traveller on it is seen. I've done this one before, but I really love that little 4-line little piece of Dhamma. The path is, but no traveller on it is seen. So if you're doing the path, if you're meditating, if you're striving, if you're making sure you're doing it all properly, then the path is so narrow. But once you disappear and the traveller is gone, then the path is as wide as an 8-lane highway. Okay, anyway. Where was he going with the Satipatthana? Dependent origination. Down here somewhere. Right mindfulness. Okay, this will do. What now is right mindfulness? Samma sati. One of the first things which I said about right mindfulness is, remember, this is the 7th factor of the Eightfold Path, and it's not alone. It has things before it, it has things after it. And I do remember very clearly that Ajahn Chah, because I was with him for 9 years, or 8.5 years, would never just talk about sati. He'd always call it satipanya, mindfulness together with wisdom. In other words, the two would always go together, satipanya. And of course, sometimes people call that sati sampajanya. But anyone who knows a little bit about Pali knows sampajanya. Sam is means with, and pajanya, like many words in all languages, they get contracted afterwards. Instead of calling it pajanya, they call it panya. It is the same word, but just contracted. And many of the words, even in English, are like that. Like the word crikey. You ever heard anyone say crikey? And that's actually a contraction. Around many hundreds of years, it means actually a shortened version of Christ kill me. Yeah, that's what it means. But it gets sort of contracted, and becomes crikey, so no one really knows what it means. Sampajana becomes sampanya, with panya. So it's the same word. And sometimes, if you're a scholar, you can actually get different earlier sort of teachings, later teaching. You can actually see just the way that language changes over time. It's easier to say the shortened versions. So, and one of the reasons I say it's always with some wisdom to make it powerful. And where does it come from? Where does the mindfulness come from? I made this point last time. It's supported, it's based on the first 6 factors of the Eightfold Path. And it leads to the next factor of the Eightfold Path, which is samadhi. So little by little you see, when you put it in context, rather than take it out of context and just look at it on it alone, give it the context and it becomes very clear what it means. And the 4 focuses of mindfulness. Now sometimes people call it the 4 foundations of mindfulness. But really, I would say there are 6 foundations of mindfulness. The first 6 factors of the Eightfold Path. That's the foundation, where it comes from. So what it actually are is what you're doing with that mindfulness. You're focusing it on 4 things. On the body or stuff, if you like, and Vedana, experience, the mind, chitta, and Dhammas. Those are what you're focusing your mindfulness on. So it's not just being mindful, it's where you're focusing on it, so it leads to the next factor of the path, the samadhi, and eventually enlightenment. So, the 4 focuses of mindfulness lead in one direction only, to the purification of beings, to going beyond sadness and crying, to the disappearance of physical and mental suffering, for the attainment of the true way, for the realization of nibbana. That's what it says straight away. And so you can see that translation, and some, and I would call them just mischievous translators. They say the 4 focuses of mindfulness are the only path, are the one path. They call it ekayana. And the word ekayana means it goes into one direction. That word is used one more time in a different context in the Pali Canon. It's actually the next sutta to the Right Mindfulness Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya. And there they use it as a simile for karma. So there is a path through the jungle. and it's got no left turns, no right turns, and at the end of the path is a big pit of burning coals. And if you walk on that path, there's no U-turns, you can't left or right, you're going to get into that pile of coals and burn yourself. In other words, that's a simile for bad karma. If you do bad karma, then some particular types of bad karma just leads in one direction only. But it's not the only way to do bad karma. Don't start thinking and fantasizing. The same with good karma as well, but that they call that ekayana. It's a one going. It's not the only path, because there's another in the Dhammapada. It says the only path is the Eightfold Path. If you want to get enlightened, and I'll read that out in a few moments because I think that's down here somewhere. So that particular translation was from Bhikkhu Bodhi. It leads in one direction only. It's not the only path. So, what are the four? Having restrained the five hindrances, you abide aware of the body, energized, knowing the purpose of what you are doing and mindful. Having restrained the five hindrances, you abide aware of experience, Vedana, energized, knowing the purpose of what you are doing and mindful. Having restrained the five hindrances, you abide aware of the mind, the citta, energized, knowing the purpose of what you are doing and mindful. Having restrained the five hindrances, you abide aware of mind objects, energized, knowing the purpose of what you are doing and mindful. Now, there's quite a bit of repetition there, and I kept that repetition there just to make it quite clear that each of these four focuses of mindfulness begin with having restrained the five hindrances. You abide aware of them, the focus, energized, knowing the purpose of what you're doing, and mindful. But I thought this is establishing mindfulness. But you have to have mindfulness before you actually do this. And in particular, having restrained the five hindrances. If you look at the usual text, and I don't know again why they do this, because it was very meaningless and also quite taking you on a different idea of what Satipatthana is. When they said having abandoned grief and covetousness for the world, which to me meant very little. But then, those of you who start learning some Pali, you start to see that having abandoned is like vinaya. It doesn't mean abandoning, it's like restraining them. The vinaya is the same root as vinaya. You're training. You train to it's a verb, not the noun, vinaya. Having sort of restrained something. And the Lokaya Bija is a synonym for Kamachanda. Many, many, many times. Domanassa is used in two sutras as a synonym for Vyapada, the second hindrance. And in the commentaries to both the Satipatthana sutras, they say very clearly that that's what this means, having restrained the first two hindrances, and by extension the other three as well. That's from the commentaries. That is what sort of people who have learnt Pali and know those commentaries should actually write. So in brief, it means having restrained the five hindrances, which make a lot of sense. That's what you do in the sixth factor of the Eightfold Path. The right virya. That's purpose. To restrain things so the five hindrances are really weak. When they're really weak, of course, then you are mindful. And anyone who's been meditating can see that. If you indulge in all sorts of rubbish, then of course your mindfulness goes really weak. You start to practice, keep your precepts, and restrain your senses. And sense restraint. You see something really interesting? Nah, I'm not interested in that. You see someone doing something really awful? Nah, that's just going to stir me up. So you deliberately sort of restrain the senses. It becomes habitual after a while. And then after a while it means that you are so restrained, your mindfulness increases in power. when it does, you're happier, you can stay on an object much longer, you have strengthened your mindfulness. And you're energized. That's what those 5 hindrances, that when you relax them, you get lots of energy. Even the last time I gave a talk here before my retreat, and once you go on a retreat, sleep time goes really down. And I was really quite amazed as to how early you wake up and you're not sleepy during the daytime. So your 5 hindrances go up, and your sloth and torpor go down, which means you get energized. And you get quite clear, you know why you're doing this for. What is the purpose of mindfulness? And that is the panya part of it. Knowing the purpose of what you're doing it. That degree of wisdom. And mindful. And those 4 things you focus on. And mindfulness of the body, and it always starts off with mindfulness of the body, with mindfulness of breathing. Breath meditation. Doesn't mean you have to do that, but that is a very good example of what body mindfulness is. You go to a quiet, secluded place, like in Jhana Grove. So many nice, calm, secluded places there. Or in your cave, or in your hut. We try our best to make it comfortable and secluded. Sit down comfortably. There it says you sit down cross-legged with your back straight on the floor. So if you want to get enlightened, you better sort of get on the floor. That's what some people think. And that's why here, you go much deeper into this, then you find what it means is sit down comfortably. In a chair is fine. Laying down is fine as long as you don't go to sleep. Because you give priority to establishing mindfulness. I love that, because instead of like establishing mindfulness in front of you, which has no meaning at all, if you don't exist, you're not there, where's in front of you? I haven't even found out where I am yet, so I can find out what's in front of me. But you can understand the idiom there. In front means first priority. Give it the first thing, to establish mindfulness. So in other words, you learn how to be aware, mindful, before you even start watching the breath. And it's a simple teaching, you must have heard it before, that why is it that people, they try breath meditation, I can't do it. You watch 1 or 2 breaths and it just disappears. It's because you haven't got enough mindfulness yet to watch the breath. So spend some time establishing mindfulness. And mindfulness on the body is usually one of the best things, about how you're sitting, scanning the body and stuff like that. Until you get enough mindfulness, and it's easy to watch the breath. You just watch the breath for hours. And this is actually the nature. When you've got enough mindfulness, the breath is an easy thing to watch. That's why you have to do this, establish mindfulness first. So you don't make breath the most important thing. Mindfulness is the most important thing, first of all, and then the breath comes in its own time. You can, if you want to, do the breath first of all, but the purpose is I'm getting my mindfulness strong first of all. How do you know if your mindfulness is strong enough? You watch your breath and it doesn't disappear. It's just there, effortless. That's why mindfulness of the breath is just so much fun. Sitting there, just watching your breath come in, go out, come in, go out, come in, go out, all afternoon. Anyway, then mindful you breathe in, mindful you breathe out. Okay, now we have these 4 little stages. When the in-breath and out-breath are long, you are aware that they are long. You know what it used to say? When you're breathing in an in-breath, you know you're breathing in, when you're breathing in a short in-breath, you know you're breathing in a short in-breath. When you're breathing in a long in-breath, you know you're breathing in a long in-breath. When you're breathing out a short in-breath, you know you're breathing in a short in-breath. When you're breathing out a short out-breath, you know you're breathing out a short out-breath. And it's so hard to say. If ever you have to teach this, you always get tongue-tied. So why can't you actually translate it? When the in-breath and out-breath are long, you're aware that they are long. When the in-breath and out-breath are short, you're aware that they're short. That's what it means. And it's easier to understand. I mean, it's not changing the meaning. It's just translating in a way which keeps the meaning accurately, but also makes it easier to say if you're teaching it, and easier to do, to hear rather. When the in-breath and out-breath are long, you wear they are long. When the in-breath and out-breath are short, you wear they are short. Then you learn to experience the whole of the breath as you breathe in and out. Then you learn to calm the breath as you breathe in and out. Okay, that's the breath meditation, the first part of this. And so, first of all, one or two things. I always pause on this because that's such an important part of monastic life anyway. What if your in-breath is not long or short? Because most of the times my breath is not long, it's not short, it's kind of in between. Does that mean you're not doing breath meditation? And of course not. In other words, they are not you have to do the in-breath long first and then short. No, just you know roughly where it is. Is it long, is it short? It's all about 2/3. Or maybe it's just medium. And just allow it to be natural, but you just know, it gives you that bit of extra thing to know. Which means that it's more interesting. And of course you've heard me saying all these other ways of making your breath interesting. Breathing out, breathing in like energy, health, power. Breathing out, let go. It does work if you keep on doing that again and again and again. And it gets a bit of a habit. Then you can actually breathe out all your sicknesses. It actually works.
I like the backwards breathing.
Backwards. How many times you do that, you backwards monk? Yeah. But I said that last time, so that's in a different place. But just making the breath interesting for you if you need to make it interesting. And then, when the in-breath and out-breath go, then you learn to experience the whole of the breath as you breathe in and out. And the whole of the breath means from the beginning to the end. So, breathe in, breathe out. In, out. In, out. Now the whole of the breath, from the very beginning, you see all the way to the end. From the very end, all the way as you breathe out. That's the whole of the breath, not just in, out, from the very beginning to the end. From the very end, or from the beginning of the out-breath, back to the out-breath. See the whole thing. It's obvious that that's what it means. I just really I'd pull my hair out if I had any. Why people say, watch the body. Yeah, you just want to get rid of this old body. So, and it actually says the whole. You experience the whole of the breath. It says the whole of the body. It means sabakaya is the Pali. Kaya can mean breath, but it could also mean so many other things. So it can mean the body, but it can mean so many other things as well, like a body of evidence, a body of truth. And many of you know they have the things like Dhammakaya, the body of Dhamma. So it doesn't just mean physical body. It means, in this particular case, it's quite obvious. It means the breath. And then you learn to calm the breath as you breathe in and out. How do you calm the breath? Be patient. The breath becomes calm all by itself. Obviously, because you're not doing anything. You're not thinking, you're just sitting there. And you don't need so much breath. It means because you're not metabolizing that much. So your amount of oxygen that's going into your body and going out again gets much less. So everything gets nice and calm and peaceful. And that is a kaya sankara, the breath. Just as a skilled painter is aware whether they're making a long brush stroke or a short brush stroke, so too, when the in-breath is long, you know that it's long. When it's short, you know it's short. And that's just the simile. Actually, that's not the... What did the Buddha say? It wasn't... It's turning a lathe, yeah. You know, when you're carving something on a lathe, just turning around and around, and you want to sort of make sort of the shape of the piece of wood this way or that way, you know whether you're doing a short incision or a long incision, but not many people use lathes these days. We've all done some painting somewhere along the line. So you know if it's a long stroke or short stroke. So it's a similar simile, but not the same as in the sutras. And I changed it like that just again to make it so it's easy to understand. In this way, you're aware of your own body, or you're aware that bodies of others are the same nature of yours. You haven't got a special body. Sometimes people think, oh well, just because everyone else has died, that doesn't mean I have to die. I might be the anomaly. I might be the permanent being, one of the immortals. I'm special. So you're not special. No one is. Your body is the same as others. And you abide aware of the nature of both your own and other people's bodies. And this you're doing this from the breath, because the breath is one of the bodies. It's something physical, and you see this is what this body is. Or you abide aware of what causes the arising of the body. It's the four nutriments. Who knows what the four nutriments are? They are tea, condensed milk, sausages, yes. Cheers. No, that's only joking. The four nutriments are like food. So it's like passive experience, basically. It's one of the reasons why that if somebody is in hospital and they've had some sort of stroke or something, and if they're not stimulated at all, you may think they're dead, they don't respond to, when you touch them or when you talk to them, but you still stroke their hands or something if you want them to stay alive. Give them some experience they can actually feel, talk to them. Keep the Vedana going. And if they can keep that Vedana going, they may not be responding to you, but actually you're keeping them alive. It's one of the foods. And there's also the will. The will to live. It's really weird sometimes, but you can understand that sometimes people, they don't want to live. And they're so weak in their body that they can just, okay, give up. Or they can will themselves to carry on living. Like so often the case is when, that people are waiting in the ICU, they're waiting for their loved ones, their daughter to come back from wherever she is. And then they keep on living there, and once they say goodbye to the daughter, then they're gone. And they will themselves to keep alive. That's one of the important nutriments of keeping alive. And the last one is just consciousnesses. When all those disappear, they don't serve the existence of the body. The body is just a cause, and when those causes go, so does the body. This is a really important part of Buddhism. The idea of causality. Things have a cause. When that cause disappears, so does the thing. And of course the old simile of the Agiwachagota, the flame. We use it these days as like a candle. Candle depends on the wick, the heat, and the wax. Those three things come together. You need the heat, the wax, and the wick. And that makes a flame. When any one of those cease, get all used up, the flame goes out. So does, because of the causes are gone. That's like a human being. Where does the flame go? Nowhere. Question doesn't make any sense. Where does the enlightened one go after they become enlightened? The flame has gone out. They were just a candle in the wind. Elton John was right. I've said that joke before, sorry. Or else mindfulness is just a body. Impermanence, suffering are not me. Not mine and not a permanent essence. It is established in you to the extent necessary for mindfulness and wisdom, essential for liberation. The mindfulness and wisdom, satipanya, essential for liberation. It's just a body. You've got a bad back, but it's just a body. That's what bodies do. It's not yours. So, and this is teaching you. It's suffering. And it's, where is it? You realize it's impermanent, suffering, not me, not mine, not a permanent essence. It's such a wonderful thing to realize it's not yours. It's not going to last. You'll either get better or you're going to die. And so you abide independent, not clinging to anything in the world. In this particular case, not clinging to bodies. This is one way you're mindful of the body. E. And it gives some more examples. The 4 postures. When walking, you're aware in the present that I am walking. When standing, sitting, lying down, you're aware in the present moment I'm lying down, or whichever posture it is. Thus you maintain present moment awareness of however your body is disposed. In this way, you're aware of your own body, you're aware of other bodies of others, or are of the same nature as yours. You don't lie down differently than anybody else. You don't walk differently than anybody else. You abide aware of both your own and other people's bodies, or you abide aware of what causes the arising of the body, the 4 nutriments. You abide aware that the body will cease when the 4 nutriments cease, or you abide contemplating the body's causal nature of both arising and ceasing. Or else mindfulness is just a body, impermanent, suffering, not me, not mine, and not a permanent essence, is established in you to the extent necessary for mindfulness and wisdom essential for liberation. This is another way you are mindful of the body. Now here I never mentioned last time, the 4 postures, one of the most common ones is walking meditation. So you just walk. You know, I'm walking in this present moment. But what happens is this gets so similar to the breath meditation. In other words, first of all, you're aware you're walking. You make sure the mindfulness establishes in you that you're walking. And then you start to notice the left foot walking, then the right foot walking, then the left foot walking, and then you see the whole of the left foot walking. And from the time it just starts to lift up and move up. And I often tell this in retreats, when you say your left foot moves up, does it go straight up, and then straight forward, and then straight down? Or like a 90-degree angle? You know, engineers should know this. It doesn't actually go that, it just goes at an angle. And then my one goes up, and then it goes down. What's the first part of your soul touches the floor when you walk? What does it feel like? And after a while, you really get into walking meditation. Now, you're not deliberately doing it fast or slow, it's just nature. There's so much going on there, you start to do it really slowly. Just lifting a foot, how many muscles have to move? If any of you have seen or known people who've had, say, strokes or bad accidents, and they have to learn how to walk again, you talk to them, and they say it's just one of the most difficult things in the world to learn. That you learn that as a kid, you know, with the help of your parents. I always used to say when people have a kid, they can't wait until their kid can walk and talk. And as soon as they can start to walk, sit down. As soon as they can start to talk, shut up. But it's very complicated. So because of that, you know, when you walk, when you really start to get to notice how you walk, oh, there's so much going on in there. And it becomes, honestly, no exaggeration, really fascinating. Lifting up and so much going on in there, you just focus in on it and you just go into, you know, into a state of samadhi. Anyway, that's the 4 postures. Or, hey, I've missed something. Oh, full comprehension of the purpose. You act in full comprehension of the purpose when going forward and returning. What are you going forward for? Why are you returning? Why are you doing anything? What's the purpose of it? You act in full comprehension of the purpose when looking ahead, when looking away, when flexing or extending your limbs, when wearing your clothes and carrying things. You act in full comprehension of the purpose regarding eating, drinking, defecating and urinating, walking, standing, sitting, sleeping, being awake, talking and keeping silent. You're not mindful during sleep. Sometimes that's a very bad translation. When they say that you are mindful when you're sleeping, you've got to be mindful all the time, okay? If you try to be mindful when you're sleeping, you won't have much sleep at all. And you'll get just really a pain in the neck for yourself and other people because you get so tense, sleep deprived. What it really means is, and so sometimes people say, you feel sleepy falling asleep. So no, you don't feel sleepy falling asleep. You are mindful in the act of falling asleep. It's not. It actually, the word means in sleep. Sute. So what it really means is not you actually physically mindful, you know why you're doing this. Why are you sleeping? Is it to escape? Because I learned that one from going to visit Carnet Prison Farm when they had an old motto in the prison. I think it was the other prisons, I've been Canning Vale somewhere. They said, 1 extra hour of sleep is 1 extra hour off your sentence. You can understand that, that they were suffering, obviously being in jail. An extra hour just in bed meant an extra hour you weren't in jail. And that's, translate that to monastic life. 1 extra hour of sleep is 1 extra hour of any suffering you're experiencing here. It's escape. So anyway, you now understand the purpose of why you're talking and why you're keeping silent. In this way, you're aware of your own body as you're aware of the bodies of others, the same nature as yours. The same thing which happens afterwards, the same explanations, aware of both your own and other people's bodies, so you abide aware of what causes arising in the body, 4 nutriments. When the 4 nutriments cease, that the body ceases. You abide contemplating the body's causal nature, both arising and ceasing. Rules of mindfulness, just a body. Suffering, not me, not mine, not a permanent essence. It's established in you to the extent necessary for mindfulness and wisdom, essential for liberation. And you abide independent, not clinging to anything in the world. This is another way you're mindful of the body, or the bodily parts. And I mentioned last time, how many bodily parts are you supposed to focus on here?
31.
I think it said 32 parts of the body, isn't it? You all know this, I said this last time, but just to remember, the Buddha said 31 parts of the body. And it's the commentaries of Abhidhamma said 32 parts of the body. You can check it out, because I got into this argument years ago, I said 32 parts of the body. I said, no, 31 parts, and it was 31 parts. And it's interesting, it's fascinating, the part which was missing, which the Buddha didn't focus on, was the brain. So 31 parts didn't include the brain. And it's very wise. It's very good to get rid of the brain as soon as you possibly can. Not thinking. But then afterwards they said, okay, put the brain in there. But how many parts have I mentioned here? It doesn't really matter how many parts. You just start to review your body. And many parts as you wish. Anyone who's a doctor here, you can add an few extra parts there if you wish. And sometimes when people have operations, they have a few parts taken out and have a few extra ones put in. They do that in extra sort of stents or what was it, pacemakers. So you've got 33 parts, no, 43 parts. I don't know how many parts of your body you've got. But the point is, you can almost like split this body apart and realize actually what it is. You review your body from head to toe, bounded by skin, as made up of many kinds of parts, blood and bones, tissues and organs, just as though were a full shopping bag with many kinds of groceries, such as bread, potatoes, fruit and vegetables. And of course you understand that. In the sutras it says different types of rice. I didn't know, there's so many types of rice and beans. Grains, yeah. Yeah. But even when I went shopping as a layperson, I didn't just put grains in there.
Grains.
Yeah, you put all sorts of other stuff in there. So too you review this same body as full of many parts. Thus in this body there are hairs, bones, shit and urine. And the reason I put the shit and urine in there was just to, whenever you're giving a talk, you need to sort of wake people up. Maybe, you can't say that, Ajahn Brahm. Oh, sorry. Yeah. That is another way that you are mindful of the body. The elements. Or you view your body by way of the elements. Thus, in this body there are the earth element, water element, fire element, and the air element. In other words, you just dissect stuff into a much more, I suppose, scientific. But of course, these days, you'll just say, in this body, it's just the results of the four basic forces of nature, a few quarks, and other fundamental particles. You can do it that way if you wish. Or the 9 charnel ground contemplations. We always put this in the end. But it's fascinating to see like a dead body and see the dead bodies start to fall apart. Unfortunately, we can't really do that these days that easily. And it was fascinating for me to go to autopsies. I used to go to autopsies a lot when you were a young monk, especially in a place like Thailand. It was understood that monks could go and see autopsies. And so we soon found out the best hospital to go was over in Sirirat Hospital. Just on the opposite side of the river to the old palace. And the best time to go there was really early in the morning. And so sometimes people say, we get an early meal or something. So don't get the early meal if you're going to go to an autopsy. If it's still in the stomach, sometimes it doesn't stay in the stomach. But anyway, and it gave directions of where you go around the back of the hospital, because that was where the special room was, where you see the real tough autopsies. And that's where, and on Monday was the best day, because on the weekend, there'd always be like bodies dragged out of the river. Yeah. And so I remember doing that, going there early in the morning and seeing one of the bodies. You just got to walk in there because people were happy for you to, supporting a monk. And so you go in there and you see this bloated body, a real one, a stank. And you see the poor old doctor. I don't know how come the doctor had to do that job. And there must have been some sort of punishment, because it wasn't a very good job he had to do. So actually, to this body just dragged out, find it, was it shot, was it stabbed, or why was it in there? And had to sort of turn it over, and just the skin was sort of falling off it. But then it was just all bloated, and had to actually pierce the body to get all the gas to come out, so he could actually examine it properly. And it was with a very high-tech equipment, which was a bamboo pole with a 4-inch nail on the end. Honestly. It was a long pole too. You know why? Because he was standing and putting as far away as he could, and then punctured it, and then all this stuff just blurred up on the ceiling. It's stuff from the last time that was done on the ceiling as well. It was a waste of time cleaning it, because I don't think anyone would dare to clean it. And then the stench which came up. I am tough, believe it or not. And just the stench was just so strong. It just, I had to sort of go out the door. And he went out until the stench started to disappear. Then he could examine it, and all those things. But that wasn't that important to me. What was really important, I mentioned this to someone today, was when I went to the autopsy and saw a young man, the same gender as I was, about the same age. And that hit me much more, because I could relate to it much better. Just the swollen corpse from a river, that was something weird. Good to tell other people about in talks, but when it's something close to you, that's a bit more. See why you do the charnel ground contemplations. So anyway, here they say, you see a corpse on the side in the charnel ground, up to 3 days old, bloated, livid, and oozing matter. You reflect your body as the same nature, it may become like that, it's no exempt from that. Or you see a corpse thrown aside in the charnel ground being devoured by birds, animals, or maggots. You see a corpse thrown aside in the charnel ground, a skeleton with flesh and blood held together by sinews, a fleshless skeleton smeared with blood held together with sinews, a skeleton without flesh and blood held together with sinews, a disconnected bone scattered in all directions, bones bleached white, the colour of shells, bones heaped up, bones more than a year old, rotted and crumbled to dust. You reflect that your own body is of the same nature. It may become like that. It's not exempt from that fate. And everybody else's body as well is like that. What that does is actually gives you that sense of you're not so concerned with bodies. In that way you're aware of your own body, or you're aware that the bodies of others are the same nature as yours. You abide aware of both your own and others' bodies. You abide aware of what causes arising in the body, the four nutriments. You abide aware that the body is of the nature to cease. When the four nutriments cease, so you abide contemplating the body's causal nature, both arising and ceasing. Whilst mindfulness that it is just a body, impermanent, suffering, not me, not mine, not a permanent essence, is established in you. The extent necessary for mindfulness and wisdom is essential for liberation. And so you abide, independent, not clinging to anything in the world. That's another way that you are mindful of the body. So if you get attached to bodies or other people's bodies, you see somebody you're really attracted to, and see what they're going to be like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. All these people, when I was young, I thought was just so attractive, so beautiful. You look at them now, and they're fat and old.
I was looking at them, so...
Was I looking past? It's true, there's just people change and their attraction is just... They used to have this over in Thailand, I always remember this. You go on arms round in the morning in the village. When you're walking in the village, the young ladies, you can know who was married and who wasn't married, because the young ladies are always dressed prettily. Had a nice sort of dress or nice clothes on. And then, they did the blessing for their marriage. They got married to someone in the village. And then the next day they were wearing rags, because they gave the nice dress to the next in line, the younger sister. It was just, and I thought, this is really unfair. The young man marries the girl, and then afterwards he just got a girl in rags. Because they couldn't afford nice dresses for everybody, so they had to go down the line afterwards. It's just the packaging, just to try and get you to buy the goods, yeah. I mean, it's so obvious, that was what we thought was strange. Anyway, the benefits of...
16-17-year-olds that are coming to the monastery that are looking to get married.
Who?
Are there some 16-17s coming to our monastery on a daily basis looking to get married?
Yeah, sometimes they're wasting their time anyway. Anyway, benefits of mindfulness of the body. When mindfulness of the body has been repeatedly practiced and developed, these 10 benefits may be expected, especially when you've done it properly, as having weakened, restrained the 5 senses with energy and mindfulness, knowing the purpose. These things just happen. You overcome delight and discontent. Because much of that delight and discontent is in things. You overcome fear and dread. Your body gets sick. Are you really afraid? Somebody comes up to you and said, well, I'm sorry, it's a cancer and it's untreatable. You waiting for your biopsy? Have you got fear and dread? If you understood the mindfulness of the body, and the biopsy came in and said, yeah, you're terminal. Yay! I'm out of here. Are you really looking forward to old age? You bear cold and heat, hunger and thirst, and contact with flies, mosquitoes, ticks. They didn't have that in the original. I'll put that in there. It keeps the meaning, but just is not quite exactly what the Buddha said. Wind, the sun, and creeping things. You endure unwelcome words. And people always said nice things about you the last year. No matter who you are, you're always going to get unpleasant words. You can't escape from it. So you endure it. Yeah, it's just words. And originally bodily feelings that are painful and menacing to life. Mindfulness of the body gives incredible endurance. Not that, I'm going to just hold on to this and just bear with it. It's much deeper thing, it's just bodily feeling, that's all. So you don't give it excess importance. You experience when... Number 4. You experience whenever needed, without difficulty. the 4 jhanas that constitute the higher mind and provide a pleasant abiding in this very life. Now one of those translations, and somebody pointed this out, actually it's on the internet, they said, what about your experience at will, whenever you desire it? And so that was actually a really sort of misleading translation. And so I translated as whenever needed. You know, the causes for them. You don't will them. Without difficulty. The 4 jhanas that constitute the higher mind. And this is actually just sometimes the adhicitta. And that, you know, sometimes you get to know when you know these Pali words, the adhicitta always means the jhanas. And provide a pleasant abiding in this very life. Would you like a pleasant abiding? You don't want a pleasant abiding? Oh, crikey. Well, you're going to get one, whether you like it or not. Or you wield the various kinds of supernormal power. Having been one, you become many. Having been many, you become one. You appear and vanish. You go unhindered through a wall or through a mountain or through space. You dive in and out of the earth as though it were water. You walk on water without sinking as though it were earth. Seated cross-legged, you travel like space, in space like a bird. You wield bodily mastery even as far as the Brahma world. Is that okay? You want that one? Okay. You just take that one. And of course, those things happen. But the point is that I think I've read out a couple of suttas that when a monk actually showed those things, he always disappeared straight away. Then there was this chitta, the general chitta, the householder. And he asked one of these monks to do something like that. And so the monk said, okay, let me have your robe. The general was having a robe. And he went inside the hut. And that's right, and this light came out through the keyhole and burnt the robe. And Chitta was just so amazed. And this was the general. He said, that's amazing. And then the monk realised what he'd done and just packed his belongings, his bowls, and left. Disappeared. I've seen that, similar things happen. That monk who I knew who could hear voices a long way away, and it was true. As soon as he realised, that he had his special powers, psychic powers, he just left. Because what happens is people just will always be checking you out. Come on, people say that rather that you can levitate. Come on, let me see it. If you told everybody over here, yeah, they'd think, oh, that's amazing. But then people from Malaysia will be coming over to see you, and there's all sorts of other people would be trying to check you out. This is not real. It'll give you a lot of problems. So keep it quiet. Okay, with clairaudience, divine ear, you hear sounds both heavenly and human, those that are far and well as near. That's that monk I was talking about. You read the minds of other persons, having encompassed them with your own mind, especially whether the mind is affected by one of the 5 hindrances or whether it is experiencing a jhana. So reading other people's minds. You recollect your past lives, even up to 100,000 births, and many eons of expanding universes, many eons of decaying universes. There I was such... And again, the way they write it in Pali, you recollect sort of 5 lives, 10 lives, 100 lives, 1,000 lives. I don't know why they say it like that. You just say you recollect even up to 100,000 births. Keep it shorter and more powerful. And there I was so named, of such a family with such an appearance, such was my food, such was my experience of pleasure and pain, such my life term, and passing away from there I reappeared in this place. And there too I was so named, such a family, such my life term, and passing away from there I reappeared there. Thus, with the aspects and particulars, you recollect many of your past lives. With clairvoyance, the divine eye, you see beings passing away and reappearing, inferior and superior, fair and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate. One understands how beings are reborn according to their actions, their karma. Or by really realizing for yourself with direct experience in this very life. Sometimes they write there with direct knowledge or direct wisdom. I said direct experience. I thought it was a much more powerful word there. Realizing for yourself with direct experience. You see this for yourself. Hindrances are gone, so there's no distortion of the facts. In this very life, Sanditika, you enter upon and abide in the deliverance of mind, the deliverance by wisdom. You are an enlightened one. Now, just to emphasize this, the rising and passing away, the rise and fall, which often people say is just like things rising and passing away, that is not the meaning of the rising and passing away in the Satipatthana teaching. It is why they rise away, why they rise up, why they disappear. And that is very important, because that actually shows that these things are of the nature to totally vanish. So I already mentioned about the body. Supported by the four nutriments, there is the origination and continuance of the body. With the cessation of the four nutriments, the body ceases. And the four nutriments: food, six sense contacts, will and consciousnesses. Now, Vedana, which I call experience. Supported by the six sense contacts, Phassa, there's the origination of experience. With the cessation of six sense contacts, experience ceases. You can't have experience without sense contact. Experience is not just there, it is dependent, arises because of the six senses. So says the Buddha. So without six senses, there's no experience. So when the six senses totally disappear and no new ones arise, there cannot be experience. Supported by nama rupa, the objects of consciousness, nama rupa, there is the origination of the citta. With the cessation of nama rupa, the citta, the mind, ceases. Citta isn't always there, like some screen, always there waiting for something to appear on it. When there's nothing to appear, there is no screen. It's like a computer. You know, if you just have no connection to the internet or nothing on it, you run out of battery. You don't still have the screen on there. Even the screen vanishes as well. The screen being like a citta. And supported by attention, there is the origination of mind objects. The cessation of attention, mind objects ceases.
Ajahn, if you go down a bit, the reference is wrong there. Yeah, see.
Samyutta Nikaya, 47, 42.
I'm not sure that was. Anyways, okay, could be wrong.
Yeah. The origination of samudaya and the passing away, atagamana. Mindfulness, any questions about that so far? I did go over that last time, but very fast, but it's important. Okay, mindfulness of experience. The second satipatthana. Don't worry, the second and third satipatthanas are very quick. How are you mindful of experience? I call it experience rather than, because if you have like the happy feeling, the unhappy feeling, or in between, there's so many different shades of that. So I find it much better to call it just experience. When feeling a pleasant experience, you are mindful that you are feeling a pleasant experience. When feeling an unpleasant experience, you are mindful that you are feeling an unpleasant experience. When feeling a neutral experience, you are mindful you are feeling a neutral experience. Doesn't say very much. There's not much more about that. Anyway, so you know you're feeling an experience, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. When feeling a worldly pleasant experience, a worldly unpleasant experience, a worldly neutral experience, you are mindful you feel such a worldly pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral experience. When feeling an unworldly pleasant experience, an unworldly unpleasant experience, or an unworldly neutral experience, you are mindful that you feel such an unworldly, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral experience. So these are making a difference here between stuff which is like unworldly and stuff which is like worldly experience. Worldly experience we all know about. Unworldly doesn't mean being abducted by aliens or flying through space. It just means things like jhanas and deep enlightenment experiences, which are often very pleasant. Sometimes unpleasant, sometimes I think, well, why was I so stupid to wait such a long time? And many of these things, but they are a different type of happiness. And so you know the difference between the two.
So it's not Deva Loka they're talking about?
No. No. Brahmaloka, yeah.
Brahma, okay.
Yeah, because that's the jhana realms.
Yeah.
In this way, again, you are aware of your own experience, or you are aware of the experience of others as of the same nature as yours, or you abide mindful of both your own and others' experiences. Or else you abide aware that what causes the arising of experience, sensory contact, you abide aware that experiences of the nature to cease when sensory contact ceases, or you abide contemplating experiences causal nature of both arising and ceasing. Or mindfulness that is just experience, impermanent suffering, not me, not mine, not a permanent essence, is established in you to the extent necessary for mindfulness and wisdom essential to liberation, and you abide independent. I would add in there of experience, not clinging to anything in the world. That is how a meditator abides mindful of experience. Second, mindful of the citta. How are you mindful of the mind? Mindful of the mind. I kind of like that word, mindful of the mind. Anyway, you understand, hey, this is pajanati. It's a different word. It's here. When feeling a pleasant experience, you are mindful you feel a pleasant experience of the mind. You use a different word here. You understand. Pajanati is a form of panya or sampajanya. You understand a mind that is affected by wanting as such, and a mind unaffected by wanting as such. Understand a mind that is affected by aversion as such, and a mind that is unaffected by aversion as such. You understand a mind that is affected by delusion as such, and a mind that is unaffected by delusion as such. Those are like the three poisons, lobha, dosa, moha. Greed, hatred, and aversion, it's usually said. But I put it instead. So the greed, hatred, and delusion. And I prefer it as aversion, wanting, aversion, and delusion. You understand a contracted mind is contracted because of dullness and drowsiness. And these are some of the ideas which come up with, I thought, which is very illuminating. That when you've got sloth and torpor, dullness and drowsiness, it's like your mind is small, it's contracted, it can't do much, can't go very far. And a distracted mind is distracted because of restlessness and remorse. It can't stay anywhere, it's just all over the place. And I kind of like those two hindrances. You understand an exalted mind, a surpassed mind, a still mind, and a liberated mind. Those are 4 different words in the text, and they keep going on in each one of these. And they all refer to the same thing. They all refer to a mind in jhana as such. And an unexalted, unsurpassed, not still, not liberated mind, not in jhana as such. So what you're doing there, you understand the 3 poisons and the extra 2 factors of the sloth and torpor and restlessness and worry, or restlessness and remorse, and also the jhanas, which is when you're not affected by those 5 hindrances, you might say. In this way, you're aware of your own citta. You're aware that the other cittas are of the same nature as yours. Or you abide aware of both your own and others' cittas. I kept on putting the word citta in here instead of like translated as mind, because that's the word which many people start to use. Original citta, amateur citta, and goodness knows what else cittas. And the Buddha is saying all these cittas, you understand them through that satipatthana, and you're aware that they're all the same. You abide aware of what causes the arising of the citta. In other words, it's not there all the time. When there's a cause, it comes into existence. and that is Nama-rupa. Or you abide aware that citta is the nature to cease. When Nama-rupa ceases, when the cause finishes off, so does the effect. Or you abide contemplating the citta's causal nature of both arising and ceasing. That's what the citta does. Whereas mindfulness is just as citta, impermanent, suffering, and not me, not mine, not a permanent essence. It's established in you to the extent necessary for mindfulness and wisdom, essential to liberation. You abide independent, not clinging to anything in the world. That's how you're mindful of the mind. Any questions? Comments? Okay. Did you have one? Yeah.
You pointed out the word Pajanati in this last one, and I'm wondering the significance of that in contrast to the others, or how?
One of the things, can you be mindful that your mind is in jhana? At the time that thought, that perception cannot arise. You're too still.
Right.
Afterwards, you know, I was in jhana. I was experiencing a jhana. Because these are such refined states, they're so still. If you even ask while you're in there, you can't ask anything, you can't say, is this a jhana, and what should I do next? That type of perception, which is characterized by putting words to things, this is yellow, this is red, this is long, this is short. Those type of perceptions, they're not there. Because the mind can't move that much. The simile which I used years ago, if you have a sharpened pencil, because I saw this on this quiz show when I was a boy on these TVs. They put the pencil point towards you, and so all you saw is a little black dot, and then sort of some brown sort of stuff, and then just something circling around it. And they asked the quiz, well, what is this? And you can't get it, because to know something, you've got to move it this way, that way, and get sort of different angles on it, and say, oh, that's a pencil. But when you just see one angle and it's still, because it's a photograph, it's very hard to understand what it is. I use that simile because that's in those deep states of meditation. It's so still. It's like a still photograph. Blissing out, but the mind is not moving. It's still. So it's really hard to get perception. What happens afterwards? You get perception afterwards.
So in a way, one way to understand it is that for the first three focuses, you understand it, you know it real time, and the last one you kind of know it after the fact.
Yeah, well, that's not all of it, because sometimes the mind in jhanas, you know that. But these other ones, this is always, I argued with myself on this, how can you be mindful that you are mindful? That you've got sloth and torpor? Even, are you really mindful when you have lust? Because your mindfulness is distorted. It's not real. It's weird. So that's one of the reasons why, and especially for the citta here, it is, you understand it.
John, what is mind object in Pali?
Nama-rupa.
So it's like what we previously translated as materiality and mentality?
Yes, yeah. So it contains all sorts of things, like obviously the bodily stuff is the rupa, and the nama, things like perception and contact and will. Those are all part of it.
Then for body, it's kaya, but kaya has other
Yeah,
translations.
that's right, yeah. No, it's rupa. So nama-rupa. Rupa is the physical stuff, including your body. When there's no nama-rupa, there's no citta.
So Ajahn, sorry, why did you translate it as mind objects then if it does include body?
It is because that was to make it more simple to understand, and based on the simile which the Buddha said of consciousness, which here is the same word as citta. The citta needs nama-rupa, like these are two bundles of reeds leaning on one another. The mind needs its mind objects, nama-rupa. Without those mind objects, and you might call it attributes of the mind if you wish to. You need something to see, something to know. Otherwise there's nothing happening. One of the best descriptions of nama-rupa is from the Samaditi Sutta. Sariputta just describes what nama-rupa is in detail.
What was that?
The Samaditi Sutta, the Right View Sutta. This is Right View, isn't it? Yeah, it's number 10, I think. It's number 9 or something. 9, yeah. Now, for the mindfulness of the mind objects, of Dhammas, here. For these mind objects here, the lovely research done by people like Ajahn and Alio get the earliest versions of Satipatthana. They only had 2 Dhammas here, the 5 hindrances and the 7 enlightenment factors. That's it. So it seems the most original form of the Satipatthana was just 5 hindrances and 7 enlightenment factors. And there's a purpose for that, because 5 hindrances are just basically the enemy number 1. That's, once those 5 hindrances are overcome and dispensed with, you're free to get all these incredible 7 enlightenment factors. So these are the enemies, and these are what happens when those enemies just disappear. And the other things which come wrong with them, having things like the 4 Noble Truths and other things in the Satipatthana Sutta, but it does actually seem that originally the earliest teachings were just those 2. And I thought it was really quite fascinating, because it makes these first 2 having a bit more importance. So, the 5 hindrances. You are mindful of mind objects in terms of the 5 hindrances. Now please remember, you only start doing this once you have restrained the 5 hindrances and established mindfulness, knowing the purpose of what you're doing with energy and stuff. So because of that repetition, sometimes people forget that it applies to every aspect of Satipatthana practice. You have to restrain the 5 hindrances first of all. But then, you're mindful of mind objects in terms of the 5 hindrances. When there was wanting, that's why I played when there was wanting. Regarding the 5 senses, you are mindful there was such wanting. When there is no wanting regarding the 5 senses, you are mindful there is no such wanting. You also understand how such wanting arises, how to let go of such wanting, and how such wanting doesn't arise again. Really getting to understand just what this first hindrance is, and how it arises, how it passes away. And I say when there was wanting, because if there is wanting, you're not really mindful. Remember, this is done having, restrained the 5 hindrances. There being aversion in you, there being dullness and drowsiness in you, there being restlessness and remorse in you. When there was doubt in you, you are mindful that there was doubt. When there is no such doubt, you are mindful there is no doubt. You also understand how such doubt arises, how to let go of doubt, and how doubt doesn't arise again. How do you know that doubt? And sometimes it's not just my own practice, that you think you've overcome doubt, and sometimes it's not really overcoming doubt, it's just arrogance. Because you think you know. You've got a nice logical framework to it. But that's not sort of overcoming doubt. And then you have experiences, you remember sort of early life memories or something. And I've mentioned this for people who do remember past lives or early life memories. The experience always comes if it's after meditation. There's no doubt about that. You know that's true. It's weird, but it shows you what the difference is when doubt has gone. There's a clarity there. It's not sort of an intellectual clarity because everything is logical. It's an experiential clarity when that doubt is gone.
So this is not lacking of faith, this is a different thing.
Oh yeah, this is just a abandoning of defilements and a strengthening of your mind. Yeah.
In relation to the absence of sati when a hindrance is present,
Yeah.
and so you put it in the past, there was, what is it that knows that the hindrance was present? What's the knowing? Because something must have known it so that sati can then know it was there.
Memory. They even have a nice word for it. What was it? I forgot the word. Pachawakanayana, where you recollect what was happening in the past.
But there must have been a knowing.
There was a knowing there, but it wasn't, you can't really call it mindfulness in the sense of a satipatthana. In that sense, everybody is mindful, except when they're unconscious or fast asleep. Even drunkards are mindful enough to find their way home somehow. I remember doing that when I was a student. I don't know how I got back to my room. I was totally drunk. And it started to teach you that there's always some mindfulness there somewhere. The mindfulness is so weak. But I can't even remember I did that. So a lot of times the mindfulness was so weak I was walking, but I didn't know what the heck I was up to. It's very dangerous. So the knowing, and just, you can't call it like full mindfulness. You can't really call it much mindfulness at all. Mindfulness has different qualities to it. And if you want to do satipatthana, it's having abandoned, having weakened, restrained the five hindrances. So you should have really quite strong mindfulness before you do satipatthana. Otherwise it doesn't work. So that degree of strong mindfulness, having restrained the five hindrances, then when there is or was wanting, you are mindful there was such wanting. And it's just, it contradicts itself. Having restrained the five hindrances, you know when the hindrances are there. They're either restrained or they're not restrained. So what you're doing there is when you've restrained the five hindrances, you've got a clear mind. Then you know what it was like to have hindrances. You have some memory there because there was some understanding there. There was some knowing there. It's one of the problems when you try and sort of clean it up by not having too much repetition. But I did mention that in each one of these satipatthanas, it always begins, with having restrained the five hindrances. And they have these wonderful similes. Suppose you took out a loan and your business was successful. Then you repaid that loan and there was enough left over for your own enjoyment and for that of your family. As a result, you'll be glad and full of joy. Or suppose you were very ill and you couldn't eat or sleep and had no strength. Later, however, you recovered, could eat and sleep again, you regained your strength. As a result, you'll be glad and full of joy. Or suppose you were imprisoned and later were released, safe and secure with no loss to your property. As a result, you'll be glad and full of joy. Or suppose you were a slave, dependent on others, unable to go where you want. Then later you were released from slavery, independent of others and able to go where you want. As a result, you'll be glad and full of joy. Or suppose you had to travel along a dangerous road, across a wilderness, but later you had passed through that wilderness safe and secure, with no loss to your property. As a result, you'll be glad and full of joy. There's five similes there. So too, when these five hindrances were present, you look back upon them as a debt. That's wanting. When you want something, it's like borrowing happiness. You have to pay it back with interest. You don't want anything, you're just enjoying this moment. You're not taking out a loan. Or a disease, aversion, ill will. The disease, and once you have ill will, it's so easy to keep that ill will going. It's your fault, isn't it? You made me do this. My parents, or the government, or my ex-wife, my ex-husband, or somebody. It's like a disease and it infects. And imagine you sort of get rid of that disease. Yay, I'm healthy now. Paid off all your debts. Yay. In prison, dullness and drowsiness. I love that one because it is contracted. It's in a prison. You've been put in that prison, you can't sort of do very much. Well, I don't mean that's the wrong simile because you're not supposed to do anything anyway. But, you just feel contracted. Or slavery, and I love that one. Restlessness and remorse. You're a slave. You're like owned by your will. Telling you what to do. Never allowing you to have any peace, any moment. If you have peace too long, you start getting into deep meditation. I'm peaceful at last. Then something comes up, you've got to do something. So you feel like you're a slave, with no freedom at all. That's one of the weird things. If you've been a monk or a nun, you stay here for long enough, and people say, you're crazy, you can't do this, you can't do that, and there's so much stuff you're just resisting or restraining. You never feel so free as when you're keeping all your precepts. Because you are free from desire. It's not the freedom of desire, it's the freedom from desire. And a dangerous road across a wilderness is doubt. You don't know which way to go. And it's dangerous. But when these 5 hindrances have been abandoned, you regard them as freedom from debt, health, release from a prison, freedom from slavery, and reaching a land of safety. Those are the hindrances, the enlightenment factors. It's almost like the opposite. Or your mindfulness of mind objects in terms of the 7 enlightenment factors. When the enlightenment factor of mindfulness is present in you, you understand that it is present. When the enlightenment factor of mindfulness was not present in you, you understand it was absent. It was absent. This is just basic logic. It has to be that way. The enlightenment factor is, when the enlightenment factor of mindfulness was not present, you cannot understand it is absent. Or when it's not present, you can't understand that. You did understand it. You also understand how there comes to be the arising of the absent enlightenment factor of mindfulness, and how it comes to fulfillment by development. It's not just mindfulness, how it comes to fulfillment. You just aren't mindful. No, it has to be strong mindfulness. When the enlightenment factor exploring the Dhamma is present in you, and I think you've heard me say before, instead of contemplating the Dhamma, it's too much thinking. You've heard me do this before. I hold up something. What is this? You explore it. You're still enough, mindful enough, it starts to open out. You start to see things which you've never been taught before. To see a world in a grain of sand, a heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in Ajahn Brahm's Dhamma talks. So you explore the Dhamma, and you don't do it by thought, you don't move, just allow the mind to see that Dhamma open up to you. The enlightenment factor of energy is present in you. Enlightenment factor of joy is present in you. Enlightenment factor of tranquility is present in you. Enlightenment factor of stillness is present in you. But the enlightenment factor of equanimity is present in you. You understand that it is present. When the enlightenment factor of equanimity was not present in you, you understand it was absent. You also understand how there comes to be the arising of the absent enlightenment factor of equanimity, and this comes from all of these ones. And how it comes to fulfillment by development. And each one of these, you can see the 7 enlightenment factors, how they actually work on one another, and they build up from mindfulness. You start to explore the Dhamma, and energy comes up as well, which is one of those things when the 5 hindrances get weakened, as well as, the 5 hindrances get strengthened, when they get strong, that you also, weariness and discontent also get weakened. That's from the Nalakapana Sutta. And when discontent gets weakened in you and weariness, you're energized and you're happy. And so explore the Dhamma, you get energy, free energy, you don't strive, just energy comes. Enjoy, having a good time. And from the joy, tranquility. Joy, the joy of the Dhamma doesn't mean you just jump up and down and do a dance, and do cartwheels. That's not the joy. The body is happy. It's got joy in it. So it gets very peaceful and still. And the mind becomes peaceful and still. Got tranquility. That's the joy, gives rise to tranquility, and the tranquility gives rise to more joy. And that gives rise to samadhi, stillness. It's an enlightenment factor, jhana. And from that you get equanimity or contentment.
Could you explain that?
What?
Last one.
Equanimity.
Coming from the stillness to the contentment.
You don't need anything. You don't want anything. That's one of the nice things about, if it really is stillness, after you emerge from the stillness, you don't want anything in the whole world. And people can call you an idiot. They can call you just really bad words. The 4 farts cannot blow you across the lake anymore. You know that story. Because someone can upset you. That's why also always find out if a person has got that stillness, that jhana, you try and sort of stir them up.
If you translate that contentment, what would you use for Santuta then?
Exactly. So Santuta is more contentment. I don't know. But anyway, just try and find a word that has a bit more meaning. The 5 components of existence. Or you are mindful of mind objects in terms of the 5 components of existence you are mindful, such as form, such as origin, such as disappearance, such as Vedana, experience, such as origin, such as disappearance, such as perception, such as origin, such as disappearance, such as will, sankhara, such as origin, such as disappearance, such are consciousnesses, such are origin, such are disappearance. And if you haven't heard me before, consciousnesses, not one, there's 6 different types. Or the 6 sense spaces, or you're mindful of mind objects in terms of the 6 internal and external sense spaces. You understand sight, forms, understand the fetter, wanting that arises dependent on both, understanding how there comes to be the arising of the unarisen fetter, how there comes to be the abandoning of the arisen fetter, and how there comes to be the future non-arising of the abandoned fetter. How those come about is again through the wanting or the ill will. They say that as the most, I actually say here wanting. The rise is dependent upon both. And also with the other 5 sense spaces, or the 4 noble truths, or you're mindful. And this finishes off with this. You're mindful of mind objects in terms of the 4 noble truths. You understand that as it actually is, this is suffering, this is the origin of suffering, this is the cessation of suffering, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. Some of the mind objects, in these ways you are aware of mind objects, of Dhamma. You're aware that others' mind objects are of the same nature as yours, or you're aware of both your own and others' mind objects. In other words, the 7 enlightenment factors of the Buddha are the same as your 7 enlightenment factors when they arise. The 5 hindrances of Devadatta are the same as yours. In other words, these are just qualities of the mind. You take away the personalities behind them.
That means that everybody else's jhanas are the same as your jhanas.
Now that is just, that always gives me goosebumps when you start to think about things like that, because whenever you get a jhana and you experience it, afterwards you realise that's how the Buddha felt. I mean, it's absolutely true. He said that in the elephant's footprint simile. You want to find out where the Buddha is, what is a Buddha, and then you get into the first jhana and you're sitting where the Buddha sat. You understand what it was like. And that's freaky. Anyway, summary of mind objects. In these ways you are aware of mind objects, you're aware that others' mind objects are the same nature as yours, you abide aware of both your own and others' mind objects. Or else you abide aware of what causes the arising of mind objects. Attention. You give attention to these things and then they arise. Without attention they don't. You abide aware the mind objects of nature to cease when attention ceases, or you abide contemplating mind objects causal nature of both arising and ceasing, or else mindfulness is just mind objects. It's just jhanas, it's just equanimity. Impermanent, suffering. And to see that, you're blissing out in a deep samadhi in jhana, to see that as suffering afterwards. In other words, it's not going to last, it's still existence. It's not ceased yet. The highest blisses you can experience, you see that suffering. It's pretty nice suffering, but still suffering. If you understand what I mean there. And it's not me, not mine, not a permanent essence. Which is really important, because sometimes you get those deep meditation experiences, you think, oh, that's it. I am enlightened. Or I experience jhana. It's not you, it's not me. You don't own these things. It's not the permanent essence. It's established in you to the extent necessary for mindfulness and wisdom, essential for liberation, and you abide independent, not clinging to anything in the world. That is how you are mindful of mind objects. So with reference to this, it was said the four focuses of mindfulness lead to one direction only, to the purification of beings, to going beyond sadness and crying, to the disappearance of physical and mental suffering, for the attainment of true way, for the realization of nibbana. So the Satipatthana, because you might even call it sort of a complete path if you practice it properly, having abandoned the five hindrances first of all, and then developing such things like the seven enlightenment factors, which includes jhanas. But you have to understand to do it properly. And then, even like doing jhana, you have to do all the other parts as well. So when it says, it's a complete path, fine if you do it completely. Any questions?
Where does it sit in the five khandhas?
Five khandhas, that will be in the parts of some of the qualities of perception, and also some of the things of sankhara, it's will and what's created by will. And sometimes that's where the sati comes from. It's perception, but it's a much clearer perception, not distorted. But there's many types of sati. So what we're talking here is sati which is empowered by the absence of the five hindrances. The absence of the five hindrances is developed for a long time.
So satipanya.
Yeah, mindfulness and wisdom, yeah. Because once you have
Where does that sit in?
wisdom, it's, again, in the five khandhas, you'd put that as part of perception and experience and the will. Because consciousnesses, they're just like the experience, like the screen on which experience is played out. So it may be like the screen of this little tablet here. It's nice and clean. You've sort of rubbed it nice and clean when you've got strong mindfulness.
But to separate them, it's slightly artificial.
It is, yeah. Because you can separate things in so many different ways. Like I did mention, like even just the body, 31 parts of the body, or sort of 32 parts, or just 36 or 2 or whatever. You know, you can categorize things in so many different ways, but as long as you're categorizing things and you're not just thinking it's just one thing, one essential, immortal, permanent essence.
And then at the beginning of tonight, when it refers like suppress the 5 hindrances before trying mindfulness and breathing.
Restrain them.
Restrain them. So, how should someone consider checking that restraint if they were struggling in the mindfulness? Do they go back and come up with a checklist and say, I shouldn't have had that slice of cake at lunchtime, or I shouldn't have got angry with Beryl 3 days ago?
This is you use the other factors there for both. The right view and also the right motivation. Are you doing the right motivation? You're doing this out of letting go, renunciation. So that extra slice of cake, that wasn't renunciation at all. Or was it? No, honestly, sometimes I put things in my mouth because someone's looking at me and said, you must take this. I do it for others. Honestly, sometimes, most times I do it for myself. And sometimes for others. I told you this afternoon when you came for an interview, that incredible story which made a big difference to me, a simple one, where Mara was following the Buddha around for the first few years, trying to find fault with his practice to prove he wasn't really enlightened. He finally found the Buddha sleeping during the daytime, having a nap after lunch. I've caught you out at last, you're not really enlightened. Right now other people are working hard, probably making the food they're going to offer to you tomorrow. And you're just laying around doing nothing, you lazy no good for whatever he said he was. Why are you taking a nap after lunch? And the Buddha replied, for the happiness and well-being of all sentient beings. And that wasn't just an excuse, that was a reason. A logical one. His body needed to rest. And that's the only reason why he ever did anything. For the happiness and well-being of all sentient beings. So if this evening you go back to your hut and you take a nap, why? For the happiness and well-being of all sentient beings. That's going to really make them happy. If you're not getting sick and you're sort of a happy, balanced individual. Okay, so I've gone a bit, so it's gone to 10 to 11. No, 10 to 9. Not that bad. Okay, so that finishes off the Satipatthana. The next thing will be Nibbana through Anapanasati, which is, again, it does use the 4 Satipatthanas and Anapanasati. And just to give you the intro for next week, when mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it's of great fruit and benefit. When mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it completes the 4 focuses of mindfulness. And I saw this years ago. People said, oh, you either do samatha meditation or vipassana meditation. Samatha meditation is things like mindfulness of breathing. Vipassana is satipatthana. And the Buddha comes up in here and says, when you do anapanasati, you also do at the same time the 4 satipatthanas. No difference. So anyway, that is the introduction. It's coming to a theatre close to you in a short period of time. Sadhu, 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 anumodami. Very good. Okay. Oh, thank you. I almost forgot that again.
It's in the Anapanasati Sutta.
Arahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantam Abhivademi Suakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Lakshman, tomorrow morning after breakfast, interview? Okay. Don't lose any sleep on it.
You get the job.
About 7 o'clock.